Okay, Jill, I'm going to show you the kind of files that I'm going to send to you and the layers that they are in. It's a Photoshop file. This will basically have about 4 layers. The top layer is called line art, and it'll be the black and white figures that I will have done. And then the layer below them is the called figure color, and those are just the flat colors to the figure. Those will all be done. That'll all be done. You won't have to do that part at all. In fact, I'm going to hide these just to show you what's left. And then next is something called BG lines, or background lines. And these are the lines that originally were done in SketchUp, and so that's where they come from. I used this with a plug-in to create what I call the flats layer, which is at the bottom. I'm going to hide the lines and show you the flats. And the plug-in that I used creates arbitrary colors in every separate shape. So all this stuff is just arbitrarily done, and so that's why you get these wild and crazy colors. Now you may, this is what you'll actually work on, this the flats layer, but the way to go about it is to keep the flats layer as it is. What you're going to do is duplicate it, and you can call it whatever you want to. I might call it BG color. And the reason, and this is the layer that you would work on. You would, select parts of it and then change the color. And the reason that you keep this layer down here is, well, for instance, I'll just give you an example. Let me go in. There's all these arbitrary colors here on this light fixture, and I don't want them to be so wildly different. So I'm gonna maybe try the quick selection tool and see how much of this I can get pretty easily. Okay, so I got that pretty well. I got a little bit right there. Okay, now I got a little part there that I didn't want. I missed this part that I do want. Let me get that. So I'm going to hold down Option, get rid of that part. Ooh, maybe add that back. Okay, so I've mostly got what I want. So if I need to, I can use the polygonal lasso and Option click this part to get rid of it. So now I've selected the part that I want. And there's a lot of ways you can go about this. You could individually color each one of these, but it might be easier if you do something like use adjustments and then change the hue saturation, like create a hue saturation layer. Make sure it's clipped to just the layer below, and then you could colorize it. So I'm going to click on the colorize, and notice how it all becomes one hue, just different values, and you can make it whatever you might say. Well, I think that's going to be in the blue family, and you could play with saturation and so forth, and lightness and darkness. You can play with all that. And then you might say, well, I want to select these 4 shapes right here. And so you go here to the background color, you select that, and that, and that, and that. Actually, let me try this. Say this, and this, and this. And notice how the values are so similar, even though there's a slight difference, that they're all picked up. And you may say, well, I really want just that middle one. I don't want these two. The way you can get it is you can go to flats, and you can select it by itself because it's so different, it'll select it. So that's why you keep the flats layer, to help you select things later on. Okay, and then here you can do what you want to. Eventually, if you think you're happy with a particular saturation layer, you can merge it down to where it's now part of that layer, you know. And then again, you could always hide this background color and the flats are always there. So you'll eventually work your way around and get a basic color in for these things. And then you might decide, hey, I think I need some of these background lines. And so here's your background line layer. And you go, wait a minute, all that white, gosh, you know, what do I do? And you probably know about multiply. It's a great feature. You don't have to delete all the white. You can go up here to the layer state and change it from normal to multiply, and the white becomes invisible. And now you see black lines around everything. And you might need some of those, but you might not need others. So maybe you want this bookcase over here to be just painted, and you don't want lines around it because maybe it's more of a background thing. You don't want it to bring a lot of attention to itself, so you might just get rid of that. I'm going to be a little sloppy here, but just we'll pretend that you were very careful and just got rid of only what you wanted. Maybe this too. And then you think of the windows, you think, well, I want to keep the windows. These are decisions you'll make. But you may say, well, I definitely want that, but maybe I don't want the windows or any of this other stuff. So you can just delete that or erase it. And then I tend to like the lines to be not 100%. So I might reduce the opacity to something like 50% or so. The reason being, it's going to look a little bit more like one of those animated backgrounds in the TV shows from the 60s, where the lines themselves were just kind of gray or they weren't super strong. Okay, in fact, I've got a finished file here to show you. This has more layers. In fact, I should have said that before you do all that erasing on the lines layer, you should probably duplicate the background lines, and you can hide it. That way you'll always have a complete version, and then you can play around with this one and erase on it. And you'll know that, you know, if you ever changed your mind, if you screwed up and you wish you hadn't erased something, you still got it on this version, and you can get it back again. So yeah, I would recommend copying background lines and copying, you know, of course, the flats layer to give you the colors. All right. Now here's again is a finished file, and you can see I've got line art. I've got the figure color, and I have a layer for shadows. In fact, I'll show you what it looks like when I take that off. See, there's a shadow layer. You know, if you want to throw something like that in that you think is needed, you go ahead. If I feel like it's needed after I get it back from you, I'll put it in. Sometimes I add something that didn't go in originally, like this stool there. I had to make it as a separate layer so it could interact with the figure. And you might find that. You might find something in the background that you want to have interact with some of the figures. You know, it might end up being a separate layer. Here's the background line art copy. It is the one that this is where I left the lines. Like if I click on it, you'll see it disappear and it's all painted. But I decided that the light fixture and the control panels needed those lines, so I kept them on. I didn't want lines around the plants or anything else. So you'll make those kind of decisions about where the lines are needed. It's got multiply on, it's at 45% opacity. Here's the original line art layer with everything if I needed it. Okay, you may have an effects layer like these windows here. I've got streaks of light on them. That's on a separate layer. And you get to decide that. If you feel like you need it on a separate layer, that's fine. And then notice this, I called it background copy, or you could call it whatever you want. But if I take it off, there's the flats, all the original flats. and then here is the painted part. And if I zoom in, you'll see the kind of thing I'm looking for. Just using different brushes in Photoshop, trying to give it a painted look as if it was done by a background painter for an animated TV show. That's the look I'm going for. And when I take that off, you just see how they were flat before. So yeah, this is the kind of thing I'm wanting. You can add special effects that you want, like here. I use different brushes to try to create those painterly looks. A lot down here with the plants. See, they're all green even. And then I went in and gave them some painterly colors. Of course, the more painterly you can make this look, the better. Some of this doesn't look entirely hand painted, but that's the goal, is to try to make it look hand painted. And that's where I think you've got some really good skills. I think you would be able to do that. So yeah, I'll be giving you the file like this. Well, let's see. You'll get it like this, without the background layers copy or the flats copied. And then you'll want to turn it into this, a layered Photoshop file that you'll give back to me. Just don't change the dimensions. Keep it at 600 pixels per inch. Don't change any of that because it has to fit in exactly into InDesign. So that's pretty much what I want you to do. I'm happy with you using an iPad if it would help you, like if you use a stylus and something like even you can input Photoshop files into Procreate, which is a great program that allows for painterly kinds of effects. And in fact, I would do this. It's just that I've got so many pages to do that I will never finish this project if I try to paint all this stuff myself. So that's why I'm hoping that you can help me out here. And after I get it from you, I'll probably go in and tweak it. I mean, that's fine. I expect to do that. I expect to go in and add things here and there that I want. But feel free to do some special effects, whatever you think is needed. Like on this wooden trellis here, I added some lines there. If you want to see an example of other pages that I've done, I think you've seen this stuff. This is from the first issue of Omni-Men. These are just some painted backgrounds. I've taken the dialogue off so you can see it a little better. You can actually go to omnimen.com. It's got a hyphen in it, and look at the previews to see these. But notice how this is, my attempt is to try to make it look painterly. Now, sometimes you'll have things like this where there's a painterly effect that interacts with or goes on top of the line art, and that's fine. You can do a layer on top of the line art if you need to. I'll probably go in there and subtract this stuff from the line art layer so I can keep it all vector, the black part. But anyway, yeah, you can see sometimes I choose not to use any outlines at all and try to make it as painterly as possible. Sometimes I choose to keep the lines in when I feel like they help clarify things. Some fun painterly effects there in the skin. Blur effects for fun, glowing kinds of effects. I've even used the distortion tool with dot patterns to create things like this, swirl, liquefy, effects like that. Had a lot of fun here with this sand creature exploding. And some texture there on the surface of this spaceship. And I used liquefy a lot here to kind of get that liquid flaming texture there. Again, blur, used a lot of blur here to get that. Then, I'll be needing stuff like this wherever you feel like it's needed. Um,